Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we are conducting the public hearing for the 2020-2021 budget for the Hcsd Central School District. This meeting and hearing is being operated remotely due to the executive order from the governor in regards to COVID-19. As this is a public hearing, we will have a presentation tonight, introduction of candidates, as well as any potential questions from the exterior via the email address for the superintendent, which will be displayed once we open up into the presentation. Please feel free to email at any time during the presentation. At this time, I'll turn it over to open the proceedings to the President of the Board of Education, Ms. Pam Strollo.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, we'll get started with item 2, the introduction of board candidates. Dr. Douglas.
Thank you, President Strollo. This year, ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 seats that are up for election in the Board of Education's annual meeting. In addition, because of a resignation due to one board member moving out of state for employment, we also have a 4th seat that is also available for the duration of the 1-year term remaining on Mr. Tyler Pravulik. So for this year's election, you can vote for 4, with the lowest vote total member receiving the lowest total will fill the 1-year seat. The higher votes will get the 3-year seats. So the individuals running for Board of Education in the order on the ballot is Mr. Tom Casey, who is running for his 1st term, Mr. Warren Conklin, who is running as a re-election incumbent after numerous terms on the Board of Education, along with running for re-election as an incumbent, Mr. Brian Lynch, who has also had numerous terms for the Board of Education, as well as a 4th candidate, Dr. Najib Raymond, who is running for his 1st term on the Board of Education. So that is the order of the candidates on the ballot, and you will be able to choose up to 4 candidates in this election.
All right. We'll move on to item 3, presentation of the proposed 2020-2021 budget.
At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Katie Bizzetti, our Assistant Superintendent for Business. And then as we get to the final slides, those slides I will end up discussing in regards to this year's ballot and voting process. Ms. Bizzetti?
Sure. Give me one moment to share my screen and we'll get started.
For everyone in the public, the screen is being shared so that you can see the presentation that Ms. Bizzetti will be talking the board through. On the side, you will see some of the board members. All of them are there just off screen, but they can be present and we will scroll through them on the host computer so that you can see them throughout from time to time. Thank you very much for participating. Ms. Bizzetti.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending our public hearing on the 2021 proposed budget. As Dr. Douglas had indicated, we want to make sure that our community has a chance to participate as they would in a normal world, I guess I can say. So if you have any questions while you're watching this presentation, you can email Dr. Douglas at tdouglas@hcsdistrict.com, and he'll be monitoring those emails, looking for any questions, and we'll be sure to address them during this presentation. So current update on the state budget. As we all know, schools have been dismissed beginning March 16th through the end of the school year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of this pandemic, state financial situation went into turmoil. The state received some federal stimulus money, and part of the decision the state made with that money was to replace state aid money with this federal money. So a dollar for dollar swap of $1.1 billion in state aid with this federal aid that they've called a pandemic adjustment. So foundation aid that was initially proposed for Hcsds to increase by $96,000. That increase, was removed upon final budget with foundation aid held flat at 1920 levels. Also included in the final budget are 4 adjustment periods for reductions of state aid. So essentially there's 4 periods within the budget where the governor and his team can review the state's financial position and at that time adjust state aid for various public entities such as school districts. The first adjustment period did end at the end of April, with the next one coming up at the end of June. I know the state is waiting to see if there's any more federal aid coming to help the states during this situation. I believe if the federal government does come through and the states receive additional aid, we should hopefully maintain the aid that we have, but that's a big question mark heading into this 2021 year. Also part of the executive orders, the budget vote and Board of Elections are to be held June 9th by absentee ballot only, and Dr. Douglas will speak to that in more detail later in the presentation. This is an overview of our tax cap calculation. This is the full calculation as allowed by the law as it's written. So we have a tax-based growth factor of 1.0175 and a allowable levy growth factor of 1.81. Those are factors set by the state and by the state comptroller, assigned each year to our school districts. It's important to note when we hear of the 2% tax levy, this allowable levy growth factor is what makes up that 2%. This is the one factor in the equation that is capped at 2%. There are many other pieces of this equation, as we all can see, that can obviously impact the overall total. So with all the pieces of the calculation, we're proposing a tax levy increase of 4.98%. This does meet the tax cap calculation as required by law, and this would result in a levy increase to the district of $1,934,000 as a revenue source to the district. So based on this proposed levy and the information we currently have from the county, we receive all of our assessment data. Equalization rates are set by the state. With the preliminary information we have at this time, we can estimate that the full value tax rate could be in the range of $18.04, which is flat to the current year, or increase to $18.42. So this represents a 0.02% or a 2% increase in the full value. Again, this is all preliminary. The district has a very successful history of assessments continuing to grow between these early preliminary data to when they're finalized late summer. We're expecting that trend to continue and have some favorable information in the fall. So an overall budget to budget comparison, total budget is increasing $2.2 million or 2.78%. Some key points to note in this budget, the top line says BOE Central Administration with a percentage change of 16.63%. This is a line that includes many different areas. It does include expenses related to the Board of Education Superintendent's Office, Business Office, Human Resources Department, but also includes things for the overall function of the district, such as our insurance, our auditing expenses, and our legal expenses. But the bulk of the expense that you're seeing this year is related to the pullback of BOCES services, primarily in the areas of accounting, accounts payable, and payroll. We're bringing those positions back in-house to build a stronger system. So the increase is represented in that BOE Central Administration line, but the savings that we realized from our BOCES expense by transferring the service back in-house is represented in part in that BOCES decrease in the line below. So while it shows an increase in one line, there is a savings reflected in another line to net that out. The instructional line increased 2.2%. That is a function of the contractual increases of our 300 plus teachers, offset by some savings that we had with our retirements, and with the addition of some recoding that we've done to be compliant with our new state reporting that we're required to do. So a portion of the instructional expenses was transferred down to the benefits line. Technology, there's an increase of 21.87%, similar to the first line that I spoke of. This is a function of transferring our director of technology from a VOC service to an in-house position, an increase in a district line, but a savings represented in the VOC's line. Benefits increased by 4%. This includes, we were able to increase our health claims line by a portion to keep up with our health claims that we pay for our district employees. We have increases for our ERS, TRS, and Social Security expenses that correspond with increase in salaries, as well as summary coding that I spoke of earlier, away from specific lines to the benefit line where they make better sense with our state reporting. And finally, I'll mention the debt service line. This is where we pay our bonds on our bus purchases and our debt on our capital projects. So we're still stepping into our 5-year rotation on our bus borrowing, and we're still ramping up our borrowings for our $94 million capital project for the 2030 initiative. Both are offset by either building aid or transportation aid. So overall, all these components come together for the $2.2 million increase for a total budget of $82,129,000. So for an overview of our state aid, this slide now says state and federal aid because of that pandemic adjustment. $548,000 was pulled out of our state aid, pulled out of our foundation aid, and is coming to us as a federal source. So $548,000 shown below in the pandemic adjustment. We have, at this point, a projected increase in transportation aid in our BOCES aid. We do see a decrease in our building aid. This was a decrease that was anticipated with some old debt and some old aid that corresponded with it aging out on our books. So overall, our state and federal aid, a decrease of $238,000 or 0.7%. Overall revenue picture, the corresponding 2.78 increase. I'll speak more later, but we did use more in our reserves and in our debt service reserve to balance this budget this year. So with our state aid and our tax levy, we have used $2.6 million in district reserves and fund balance to balance this budget, as well as the addition of $630,000 in our debt service reserve to help offset the cost of our debt service we have on the books. So this budget currently maintains all educational and extracurricular programs. We focused on items of safety in this budget. We've included funding for GPS tracking on all of our buses, as well as continuing our initiative of updating all radios within our district buildings to enhance our emergency communication. We're utilizing district reserves of $600,000, $2 million from fund balance, and as I mentioned, we've utilized this year, where we haven't last year, $630,000 from that debt service reserve, which enabled us to decrease our maximum allowable tax levy from 6.76% down to the 4.98%. Again, this tax levy is within the tax levy limit. It requires a simple majority of 50% plus 1. And again, the current estimates are showing very favorable at this time for our estimated tax rates, either remaining flat or up to $38 per $100,000 of assessed home value. But again, favorable experience that we're not expecting to see a change in. Overall use of the district's debt service and fund balance to balance our budget and maintain all programs and positions within the budget. This budget increase of 2.78 does fall in line with our overall budget to budget history over the last several years. are very mindful of making sure that our budget remains reasonable and achievable with our means. So as I mentioned before, we have had favorable experience with our tax rates over the years, which has allowed us to essentially stay within a very strict range of where our rates have been. And when I mentioned the favorable experience that we have each year from where our projections are at this point in time to where things are finalized in August, using 1920, for example, at this time we were estimating a $39 increase at that time. Once the numbers came in and everything was finalized, it was actually a $6 increase in tax rate per $100,000 home. So based on information that we're receiving, we're on track to still maintain those favorable rates. So Proposition 2 on the ballot will be the purchase of our 6 full-size buses and 2 wheelchair accessible buses for a cost not to exceed $1.3 million. These are the propositions as they'll appear. Proposition 1 is the adoption of our budget. Proposition 2, as I mentioned, is our annual bus purchase. And then we have the election of the 4 open Board of Education seats appearing in alphabetical order. We have Tom Casey, Warren Conklin, Brian Lynch, and Najib Raymond. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Douglas.
Thank you, Mrs. Bizzetti. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 2020-21 school budget vote, this is sort of a different time for voting in all school districts across New York State. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic budget vote, the Board of Education elections are by governor's order to be held by absentee ballot. In the governor's order, this does not do away with the absentee ballot process. So the district is moving forward with the requirements for voting by absentee ballot according to the law and under advice of council. Just so that you know, the district mailed required postcards to all residents with the information on how you would vote via absentee ballot, as well as contact numbers. And those were out, I believe, over almost 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, and I have to inform the board, that we contract with a company each year to do our ballots and our elections. The company had contact with us when they sent out the postcards and said everything was on track. We contacted them on, I believe it was May 25th. And again, they said that they were having some difficulties, but everything would move forward within the next day or so, and the ballots would be in the mail. Unbeknownst to us, late Friday afternoon on May 29th, the company did not contact us, but rather chose to send an email saying that they were having difficulty coming up with the necessary supplies to mail out ballots. And therefore, the district had to develop an alternate plan over the weekend. These ballots were printed by our BOCES here. They were made according to our rosters. As we indicated, those people that voted in last year's election will automatically have the ballot sent to them. Those that did not vote, all they had to do was apply via absentee ballot application according to the law, which most people have already. And they can continue to do so up until the day before the vote so that they can come in and cast their ballots. The big thing is that we are forced in this situation that time is of the essence, that we cannot mail them because there is a risk that ballots would not get home to the individuals that we were intending to mail their ballots to. Therefore, I've instructed as of tomorrow, we will be having our transportation department personally take those ballots out to those individuals that we would normally have mailed them to, and have a check and balance process so that these ballots get to the intended voters that they were expected to get to. I'm proud to say that even with the quick thinking from Friday, we have all the ballots ready to go out first thing in the morning, which even if the company that was going to do our ballots was successful, they were not even going to place them into the mail until June 3rd. which was a risk we could not take. So therefore, the ballots will be hand delivered for those that voted in last year's election, as well as anybody that has already submitted an absentee application, and time is of the essence that we can't mail it. Going forward, we would ask anybody now that is interested in an absentee ballot that they would come in during our office hours during the week at 143 Hibbard Road, and they will be able to then get the application, and if they would like, go into a separate room and complete their ballot and complete the process between now and June 9th. As all absentee ballots, whether they're mailed or whether somebody comes in, must be completed and turned into the district by 5 p.m. on June 9th at 143 Hibbard Road, Horseheads, New York. If, again, any resident needs an absentee ballot, they can contact the district for the process at 739-5601, extension 4260. That has been on all of our communications, and I know Mrs. Clark will take care of everybody. If there's anybody that has difficulty in traveling, please just call that number. We will make sure you get your ballot as quickly as possible. Again, one last time, completed absentee ballots must be at the office of the district clerk, 143 Hibbard Road, Horseheads, New York, by 5 p.m. on June 9th. So hopefully we've explained what's gone on and how we've tried to make sure that we've acted swiftly and quickly to ensure everyone's vote can be counted. Next slide, please, Katie. As I mentioned, because I've said a lot, I wanted to also put it in writing. So this presentation also has the letter that will be accompanying all of those ballots so that people have a direct explanation in case they are not home. We will deliver and mark their door that something is in between their outer door and inner door, as we cannot use the mailboxes as they are federal property. Last, we do have a question that has come in, and a couple of them, but I'd like to remind, if anyone else has any final questions at this time, you may email it to me at Superintendent Tom Douglas at tdouglas@horseheadsdistrict.com. Please include your name and your address, and I will repeat that. At this time, I do have a question set that was sent to me from Mr. James Flair. Mr. Flair asked roughly about 13 questions, so I will try to hit each one of them rather quickly. The first one, and these are some of the questions that we've also had people call in regards, are projected state federal aids for 2020-2021 confirmed? At this time, Mr. Flair, as well as the public, the federal aid we have is acknowledgement that what they've told us so far is confirmed, as well as the state aid. However, the state does have the right to take aid away from the district effectively April 30th, June 30th, December 31st, and March 31st. So what happens is throughout the next year, nothing is confirmed as we are at the discretion of the state. Question 2, where are the credits from last year's unused budget? This has been a question that we have been getting from time to time. Because we are on a remote instruction, individuals do believe that we will have savings in our budget, because for some, they believe that the school district is not operating. The school district has been operating at 100% since March 16th. We are obligated by federal statute and state statute to maintain our workforce and move forward with the education program as that's been dictated by executive order. So we have all contracts in place. There has been no one furloughed at this time by the order of the governor and the executive branch. Now, because our buses are not on the road and fuel, you'd have fuel savings and other savings, we cannot project that at this point as we start to close out our budget. We do expect potentially that we could have some funds that are in excess or surplus at the end of the year due to this closing. However, because of the undue nature of next year's budget picture and the fact that financial amounts can be pulled back at any time during the 4 periods by the state, we have to consider using any savings that we have this year to offset any potential cuts that could be coming. Now, what do we mean by that? is I'm going to use an example. If we do have some savings this year, and I'm just going to say roughly, say a fictitious number of $500,000. If next year I know I have to order 50 pallet loads of paper, and that would cost me $500,000 in next year's budget, I would probably attempt to buy that now so that I create a hole in next year's budget with the intent of using that area to fill the gap, as the state has said that they will potentially cut us by up to 20% of our aid. Hopefully making sure that the cuts that are potentially projected to come would stay away from students. So that's what we are trying to do, is the best financial position to move the district forward, and with the imminent possibility of cuts coming down the road, that we are at least in a position to try to keep this as stable of a financial picture for the district. Number 3, as of noon Friday, March 20th, all buildings and offices in the Horsehead Central School District are closed. Actually, again, that goes to the question that I just answered. They were not closed. They were operating remotely, and in many cases, certain offices were still open during that entire time. So we hope people understand that the nature of the pandemic and the remoteness didn't stop the operations of the district. Number 4, Transportation Department has 80 employees. How many have been furloughed? According to the executive order, as well as the federal orders, we were not at this time able to furlough anyone. At this point in our Transportation Department has been helping out with food service delivery for food insufficiencies in the region, as well as they will be helping out tomorrow, making sure that we can get ballots out to our voters. And they will continue to do so between now and June 9th on a rotating basis. So I hope that answers that. Number 5, there are approximately 30 plus cleaning staff. How much of the cleaning staff has been working during the school closure? In this pandemic, the school closures during this time, the cleaning staff has been working almost round the clock, cleaning and disinfecting the buildings, because when one person comes into the building, we are required to disinfect, and that will be the case going forward for the time to come. So our hats are off to all of our maintenance, cleaning, and custodial crews, as they are working tirelessly to make sure anyone that comes onto our premises as we reopen now are, as much as possible, safe, as the area are being disinfected daily, hourly, and even wipe downs are occurring throughout the day. Number 6, there are approximately 80 teaching assistants. Are they working during remote learning? Yes, they are working in conjunction with the teachers working during remote learning and providing any needed contact and support as appropriate or as deemed necessary, either in our special ed or our general ed populations. Number 7, our monitors working. They are on call as needed, but at this point, the monitors are working remotely, but we're required to maintain all personnel on staff according to the governor and federal orders. Our Regents exams, number 8, being administered. At this time, Regents exams are not being administered, as the state education department has provided an exemption for the students impacted by this dismissal at this point. Number 9, our athletic programs continuing through COVID. Athletic programs were not allowed to continue through COVID. They had just started for the spring season, and our athletic coaches do due diligence and try to prepare for the season, as well as they were hoping to prepare for a return. So we did proportionally administer a pay of 25% for our coaches. We wish we could do more, but we also must maintain the vestige of the public's interest in regards to the budget. At this point, that could be surplus money, but that surplus money at the end of the year will help for next year, as well as potentially offset a lot of our food service costs that were not anticipated as we continue possibly food service into the summer months for those people in need of food or may have food insufficiency. Number 10, prom graduation awards assemblies. Unfortunately, at this time, the proms have been postponed. The graduation we are still working with, but we must still continue with a commencement operation, whether it's virtual or in person. More information on that will be the follow. Some of our awards assemblies, there will be an athletic awards program tomorrow night, which will be virtual. And I know we're in discussions on our senior honors. So everything at the school is still commencing as best we can under these situations. Number 11, does sick leave continue to accumulate while on furlough? According to the governor's office, as well as the regulations, we must provide COVID leave for those individuals that may have contracted the disease. And then what would happen is we would have to settle up with that sick time, as the law indicates that we must provide at least 14 days of release time without any impact to individuals' furlough. That goes for us as well as, I believe, any employer in New York State. Number 12, are there any insurance premium savings due to the buildings and grounds being closed, transportation stopped? At this point, we will explore that, as I know some insurance companies are providing some reimbursement because they are not heavily liability-wise required to charge as much. We have not been told anything from our insurance companies, whether it's for transportation or our liabilities, but we will certainly check. But that's more a question at the end of the year for those individuals. I did receive one more question from Mr. Flair. I'm just looking at it. Looking at the budget flyer, there appears to be a line item doubled up legal, 44,000 in both program and administration. Is this a clerical error? I will turn that over because I just got another question, but I wanted to ask that question of Ms. Bizzetti so that she can look into it. Ms. Bizzetti?
Yep, sure. So no, that is not a clerical error. There are some specific rules about how our three-part budget is prepared, and we do have to share our legal expense between administration and program, those two components. So that's a split between those two areas that was intentional.
Okay. I did receive a question from Christine Lawless, 29 Ancox Lane, Horseheads. Will the administrator position be replaced at the high school? This is an assistant principal's position that is being vacated at the end of the year by Miss Chris Earl, who will now become the principal starting July 1st. At this point, it's too early to tell. The district will be having those discussions once we head in and understand what is happening in regards to potential budget reductions from the state. We have another question from Hayden Nicholas. Metal drives and big flats. I'd like to know how many students were included in the budget this year for the BOCES STEM Academy. How many total are we supporting, and what is the annual cost to the district? I believe that we are trying to support, I believe, Ms. Bizzetti, 2 students into the STEM Academy. However, that is contingent this year in regards to whether or not we're going to have remote instruction and the final outcome of the budget. Those are always programmatic issues that we have to worry about, and we have to be very careful because we talk about only a few students for this program. The cost is virtually the same cost in line with a BOCES program and is state aidable. And Ms. Bizzetti, do you have the cost on that?
I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can in a minute.
Yes, if you could look at that, we will come back to that. I believe it's somewhere around $13,000 or $14,000 per student. We have I don't see a name. Joe Atkinson, who is running for a political position. Why weren't ballots mailed to all eligible voters and to just the voters who voted last year? One of the difficulties is in the executive order is that we must ensure that it is a qualified voter. Just because you have a residence does not mean that it is going to be just a qualified voter, just like we do not know how many voters are at that residence. So what happens is, although the executive said that it's to be by absentee ballot, he did not remove the application process, and therefore the individuals who voted in last year's election are known as qualified voters. We drew the line at that point based on legal counsel, and anyone else was notified that they have the right to vote by absentee ballot, providing that they go through the absentee ballot process. So that is based on guidance that we have received from our council. It says in the question, the application process tends to keep voters away because of the extra paperwork. And they're talking about another district, which I will not comment on because other districts have received other information and have followed different procedures. In other districts across the state, some are sending out 1, 2, or 3 ballots to each resident with the postcard, which honestly, a district cannot ensure that there would not be people that are not qualified voting. We are trying to maintain the vestige of the election process, as well as making it as accommodating and easy for everyone to go through the absentee ballot process, and making it as best we can with the guidance that we have. And unfortunately, the executive orders that have been sort of less in detail and substance. So we are trying to do the best that we can. Katie, do you have that number?
Yep. So from our 2021 budget with BOCES, one student in the STEM program is a little over $12,000.
Mr. Flair wrote another question. It's more of a statement. It says budget increase is approximately 87%. I do not know where he gets that number from because our budget increase over year is what, Katie?
2.78.
Absorbed directly by the community who are all hurting. Please advise. Our budget is roughly 50% by the state aid and 50% roughly within 1 or 2 percentage points of local tax base. That is true. Everybody has difficulties during this time. One of the things is that we are obligated to place forth the best budget we can with the desires and hopefully the understanding that the board has done the best that they can based on what the administration has been also able to provide them. And we have had a track record of being one of the lowest area of tax rate increases in the area. If you look on our chart, just so that you know, in Horseheads, our tax on true, when you compare with other districts right now, is roughly around $18.04. And if we compare to Elmira Heights, Elmira and Corning, our major areas, those individuals would be much higher on the tax. Some are up in the $26 range, $22 range, and $20 range, which we are significantly more in line at the lower end. Ms. Hannah Smith has wrote in, why is there such an increase in tax collection costs and English as a new language cost? The tax collection cost, I believe, and I'll let Ms. Pizzetti also step in, is that we are bringing the tax collection as part of our business office back to the district, which will ultimately save money for the district because we have to pay an administrative markup on that to have BOCES run that. In addition, the English as a new language cost. Katie, would you like to take that?
Yep. So I believe this community member is looking at our newsletter where that was broken out separately this year versus last year. This was, again, one of the recoding accounting changes that we've made in the 2021 budget to better conform and comply with state reporting. So those expenses were formerly in the teaching regular school line and are now broken out in its own category. So it maintains the same level of staff, the same supply and contractual needs that these teachers need to operate, just a recoding change to move it to a standalone code.
Thank you, Ms. Pizzetti. Mr. Atkinson wrote back and said, thank you for answering my questions. It was good and complete answer and satisfied my concerns. So thank you. I have to say, for everybody that's listening, this is the best we've had in my 5 years here for questions. So I appreciate it. Mr. Flair did write one more question. And I think, Katie, you may have answered it. The expenditures program has a line for English as a new language, which had a 0 budget last year, now 173. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, so that is what I was just referring to, not new expenditures, just breaking it out from the teaching regular school line to a standalone code specific to the English as a new language staff.
Mr. Atkinson also asked for what are the physical agency fees? Fiscal agent fees.
That is our financial advisor that we hire to assist the district with our annual borrowings for both bus bonding and our capital projects. They assist with the projections of state aid as we're looking at our capital projects, those types of financial planner services.
Thank you, Ms. Pizzetti. And ladies and gentlemen, that is all the questions I have at this point. If there are any other questions, as we would not have this type of a dialogue normally in the public hearing, please feel free to give my office a call. We will get you the answers. At this time, I would turn it back to the board with any final discussion.
Warren?
Well, I want to circle back to the delivery of the ballots. As I understand it, the ballots are going to be hand delivered to those who voted last year, and they're going to be delivered tomorrow. Is that accurate, or Wednesday?
Tomorrow and Wednesday. It just we were expecting it would be Wednesday. We were able to get everything ready tonight a lot sooner than we thought we could tomorrow. So tomorrow they will start.
Okay, so if an individual who voted last year does not have a ballot by Wednesday night, what should they do?
They should call our office, which is in that flyer, to Miss Terry Clark, and she will take care. The big thing is we can never receive a double ballot from an individual, which cancels out their ability to vote. But we have the ability to track that just on the ballots going out, not on how someone votes at all. Because what happens is you have to sign the attesting affidavit that you put your ballot in, and that is separated so that at the time of count, it is separated anonymously from the envelope. We know who we received them from, but the ballot goes into a ballot box, and then they will be counted in mass with no one ever opening them until they're all together.
I'm fine with that. I'm just, this is a massive undertaking.
Oh.
And, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if one or two people fell through the cracks somehow. So I'm just asking that if they don't have it by Wednesday night, they should make an effort, because they're probably not going to get it. That's all I'm saying.
Right, and that is a good point, because what happens is we are going to try to knock on their door. If they're there, place it inside their door so that there's social distance, and that way we can confirm that they were there and we got it. If they aren't there, we will leave it on the door. We will probably hang like a red piece of paper with your ballot is in the door, so it would draw your eye to it. We're doing everything humanly possible to try to make sure everybody gets what they're expected to get, due to this unforeseen nature of NTS not living up to its contractual obligation. Just so that the board knows, we will be following up with our legal counsel with NTS after this as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I would just like to thank those community members that joined the meeting this evening, and also for submitting those questions. All right, if there are no other questions or comments, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye, raise your hands and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? All right, that concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Please stay safe.